Hello class, today we're going to be continuing on with Java arrays, and actually we're going to talk today about two-dimensional arrays. So remember in Python we could have a list of lists. In Java we could have an array that contains other arrays, right? I could have my array hold whatever I want. I could have my array hold a bunch of integers. I could have my array hold a bunch of strings. I could also have my array hold a bunch of arrays. And in doing so, when I have an array that holds arrays, I have myself a two-dimensional array. And two-dimensional arrays, as we've seen before, are great for pictures, tables, pictures. Okay, what is the syntax? So the syntax is similar. I have an array of arrays of integers, and this is my name. This is the declaration. And then I could show here, this is how I make it. So I've declared it already, and now I'm going to create it. I could have done this all in one line, but I just want to show how we could do it in two lines as well. So now I'm going to create my new two-dimensional array here, integer array 3 by 5, 3 rows by 5 columns. And so let me actually try to illustrate what that would look like. I have my array that has 3 rows. Each row has 5 entries in it. So this is the visualization of my two-dimensional array. Row 0, row 1, row 2, column 0, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. Okay? Now, I could also have done it this way, where instead of specifying it like this, where everything is filled with zeros, I could pre-initialize it like this. And in this case, all these numbers will get filled in when I make my array. I could even make an uneven array. So in this case, this first array up here would only have, for example, 3 elements instead of 5 elements. This one has, all 5 elements, and then this next one only has these 4 here. So this would be an example of my uneven array here. Now, when indexing my array, this is my row. So row 1, column 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. That's okay. That works. In fact, that would be row number 1 here. Row 0 is here. Row 1 is here. Column 0, column 1, column 2, column 3. That's my 5 right there. That's okay. 0, 3. So this is row 0. Column 1, column 2, or column 0, column 1, column 2, column 3. There is no column 3. This is going to give me an exception error. Now, remember we used the length command, or not the length command, but the length attribute to find the size of our array. So if we were to do the same thing here, if I were to say, I have my uneven array, for example, here. If I put, what is the uneven array length? In that case, it's going to tell you the number of rows. So again, uneven array length is going to be 3, because I have 3 different rows. What if I want to find the number of columns in a particular row? What would I do then? Well, I can do the following. I could say my two-dimensional array, think of this as saying, if this is a 2D array, so say I should have written that here instead of array. I should have written my 2D array here. This is row 0 of my 2D array. What is the length? What is the length of row 0? How many columns are there in row 0? This is the way we do it. So I find my rows, the number of rows, simply by doing this. And then I find how many columns in a row by doing this. You see the additional piece here? Let's continue visualizing this more. A two-dimensional array is really an array that contains objects that happen to be arrays. Instead of integer objects, now they are array objects. And if I were to do this, I could change any element of an array. They can be replaced. And I could replace any element here. So this is an element in the array. This is another element in the array. This is a third element in the array. I can replace any one of these elements. I could replace any one of these arrays with a brand new array. So let's illustrate that a little bit. So I have my uneven two-dimensional array here, and I'm going to diagram it like this. So this is the array 1, this is my array 2, this is my array 3, and I have my uneven 2D array, which actually the even better way to probably illustrate this is to say, well, my uneven 2D array is actually a reference to this object here. So my uneven 2D array is a reference to an array of 3 things. Element 1, element 2, element 3, 3 things. And each of these happen to be references to arrays as well. So then it's like that. So I have an array of arrays. So that's the visualization of my 2D array. And now my 1D array here, I could draw it like this. My 1D array is a reference to this array here. And now suppose I were to execute this statement. It says uneven 2D array, element 1 gets replaced by my 1D array. So what that means is actually this reference will get copied into here. So this will get cut off, and instead this will be copied over here. So in copying it over here, these 2 arrows, they're aliases. They now point to the same other object here. So that's kind of the deeper level visualization of what happens when we are reassigning one array to another array with in our 2D array. Okay? Let's do a little practice. Let's create a function, and let's call it add all. And what it does is it takes an integer, a two-dimensional integer array. Actually, I need to do that. A two-dimensional integer array. And it will return an answer, an integer answer of all the different elements in my 2D array. Okay, so try to work this through, and I'm going to kind of walk us through it in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to pause. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now the first thing we want to do is we'll probably create a integer total. I should define it to be an integer. Okay, an integer total. Let me actually just indent that nicely here. And then we're going to return that. So we know in the middle we need to do some calculations, but I need to initialize it to 0, and then I'm going to add up all the numbers and then return that. So now I need to iterate. So I'm going to iterate by row and then by column. So the first line will be this. I'm going to use the variable r as my loop variable. I'm going to start from 0 and go all the way to the last row. Now, the last row is represented by array.length. I'm going to stop right before that. And I'm going to increment my value every time. So that's the row. R is the row index. I'm going to say for every column index. So C is my loop variable I'm going to create, and in this case, C stands for my column index number. And so I'm going to start at 0, and this is where I need to be careful. So I need to know how many columns are in that particular row. And so this is the way I do it. This says, what is the length of this particular row? And so then I iterate through all my columns, and as I'm iterating, I do the following: get the element at this particular row column position in the array and add it to my total. So this is good code right here. I don't really need curly brackets, but if I wanted to put curly brackets in, I could put them here like this, and one like that, and that. So these would be for this for loop, and then I have another pair like right there, like that. So that would be a way I could do it. I don't really need to have that in this particular example here. Okay, what's another way I could do it? I could use the fancy for each kind of for loop in Java, and I want to show you that as well. So I could start off with this. And notice I'm actually choosing a different variable name here. Instead of using the letter R, I'm going to use the word row. And notice that it is of type integer array. It is not just merely an integer, because array here, ARR, is a two-dimensional array. So it's an array of arrays. And so I'm going to say for every single row in my two-dimensional array, do the following. So I'm going to take that row, and I'm going to get every single value in that row. So again, notice that I'm not using the same variables here on purpose, because the variable names are important. I'm going to use the word row here to represent the entire one-dimensional row. And so I'm going to write above it, ARR is a 2D array versus row, which is a 1D array. So for every one-dimensional array in my two-dimensional array here, and then I have my one-dimensional row here, my one-dimensional row array, for every single value in my one-dimensional row array, for every value, just add that value to my total. So look how nice and easy it is compared to this. This is, if I'm writing this, I will much prefer to write it like this. But this is the little trick part right here. You have to be careful about specifying the type of this variable here carefully, understanding that it's an integer array within my two-dimensional array. Okay? All right, so that's today's lesson. Have a good day, everybody.